Hi, everybody, and welcome to Wisdom Circle. I'm thrilled to be here with you. I had a little bit of a crazy day. I ran or helped run the graduation party for my son. And so I spent this morning from about 10 a.m. Pacific time until about 2 o'clock this afternoon belly dancing. and leave it to me, right? My contribution for the 5th grade party was dancers. So I brought all the entertainment. I brought a hip hop dancer and choreographer, and I brought up my belly dance teacher and choreographer. So anyway, I've been moving and grooving and listening to screaming children who had way too much sugar. So I am now in your company. It's great to see you. It was super fun. I mean, what's kind of nice, I have to say, especially because, I don't just do Sage Goddess, right? Like I have kids, and my son's 11. And what I really love is everybody knows who I am. All the kids know me. Like they're not surprised when I roll in with hip hop and belly dance and all the things. We had henna. I brought my henna ladies to do henna for them. So anyway, it was a Sage Goddess party today, but the kids had a lot of fun. So now I get to relax and talk to you about whatever's on your mind, which I can't wait. There's a lot of questions that have come up. And so I want to talk to you about kind of what the main themes are that you guys have expressed. These are the things that you're saying are kind of front and center, but we can go anywhere you want. I will tell you that the volcanic eruptions on our planet right now are no joke. No joke. I am getting ready to go to the motherland, to Hawaii, for a bit, and I'm looking forward to doing some energetic work from where I will be, which is not on the Big Island, but it's no joke. And there's a certain extent to which you can ignore the signs. It's, what do they say? Ignorance is bliss. Except we're kind of not ignorant. And so we don't really get a pass to just pretend like things aren't happening. And then we have the South American activity, as well as all of the chaos that's happening in Guatemala and other parts of the world. So we have to hold space. And one of the main things, and I'm sure you realize this, but we are a global community. And so what's really beautiful about that is we get messages and we get, insight from people in our community who are on the ground there saying, this is what's happening, or this is the work that we need done. We are a collective. And so it doesn't matter if that's not your home country or that's not any place you've been before. The whole world is our home. And when any part of our global community is hurting, we have to rise to that occasion. And I think actually, yes, well, I mean, there are many places around the world that are struggling beyond just the ones that I have mentioned. And I think it's actually really good to discuss this with the little ones in your life, not to scare them or, make them anxious, but I am trying not to raise my kids in too much of a bubble. Like I want them to be global citizens, and I want them to really care about what's happening in our world and not just say, well, that's not in my backyard, so who cares, right? So we have to, and the question of what can we do? Well, my smudge doesn't want to go out, by the way, it's like still blowing. When my smudge doesn't go out, I stop because it's a sign. And so then I dialogue. White sage is a plant teacher, just like all of the plants are. So then I ask, okay, sage teacher, what is it that isn't clear yet? Why is it that we can't put you out? What else remains to be cleared? And then listen. Instead of just sitting there trying to make it go out, recognize that sometimes when your sage won't go out or your incense won't go out, it's because there's energy that needs to be moved. Well, we are listening. We're listening. They're listening too. Yeah, you have to have white sage. I don't like to tell you that you have to do things because I don't like rules at all. So I would never give you a rule and say, this is what you got to do. Too much of a rebel for that. But I really, really believe you have to smudge every day. And you got to figure out what your smudge of choice is. I really like Salvia apiana, which is white sage. But it only grows wild here in Southern California and Baja, Mexico, east to the Anza Borrego Desert. So if you're not in those areas, it's going to be really hard for you to access wild white sage. unless you buy it from me, because we hand bundle all of our bundles here and we source it. It's organic, our white sage, and we source it from an organic farm. And so it's really, really beautiful quality. If you grow sage, bundle it up and be smudging every day. You just need to purify your space once a day. And smoke, if you've been working with me for a long time, you've heard me say this before, but the original word perfume comes from the Latin perfume, which means through smoke. Perfume was not perfume until about 150 years ago. Perfume was resin and it was burned. And so in the temples, they would burn the resins and then move the energy through smoke, perfume. And so when we think of perfume, it's such a modern creation, because really our ability to distill essential oils from plants is relatively new. Although there's evidence of really rudimentary distilleries in ancient Egypt, which suggests that they were distilling things like blue lotus. And so I think we have much more to learn. Yeah, I mean, some people eat it. One of the things that I think is really cool is in Native American culture, if you keep the seeds, the white sage seeds, one of the things you can do is remove things from the eye. So what they will do if there's something in the eye is they'll pop a white sage seed in the eye and close the eye. The seed becomes like gelatinous and it gathers up any foreign matter. And then if you open your eye and pop it out, anything that was in your eye, like an eyelash or dirt or anything, comes out with it. So it's really important if you ever work with white sage, because it's so sacred, because it is a plant teacher and a plant spirit. You don't throw anything away. So when you're done burning your sage, you gather up all of your ash and you bury it to the east in your garden, because that's an offering to Great Spirit. And you want to return the ashes of the plant to the earth. So we never throw anything away from white sage. It's very sacred. Ursula is coming to us from Upland, California. Girl, in Upland, you are going to have access to great white sage. It grows wild in Upland. Even if you go, like sometimes in Upland on the freeway overpasses, you'll see it growing wild on the side. I've been through Upland many times. So anyway, always be on the lookout, but just keep in mind it's an endangered plant because people are harvesting as much as they can. And so that's why I buy and source from a farm, because I want to make sure I'm not taking too much from local or native plants. If you harvest more than a third at a time of Salvia apiana, you kill the mother plant. And so when people go in and they just cut and cut and cut and cut and take, if they take more than a third, that mother cannot recreate herself, cannot continue to grow. So just be really careful. Be gentle with the mother. So good. So it's really great to see you guys. I want to tell you how grateful I am that you're here. Yeah, and if you can grow it outside, Rika Vari says, think it grows here in Utah. If you can grow it, do it. Anywhere you can grow, it's outside of certain zones, it gets a little trickier. Okay, so let me tell you what is on my little list of things that you guys were interested in talking about, and then we'll kind of go where you want to go. There are a lot of questions about life path and purpose. Why am I here? How do I know if I'm on the right path? If I'm on the wrong path, how do I get on the right path? And so we can talk about that tonight. That's a subject of great interest to me. I actually do grow white sage, and it's not me who grows it, it's my dad. My dad grows white sage. My dad, my family were farmers, right? We owned vineyards on Crete before the war, and had a whole farm and a little general store where my grandparents sold their fruits and vegetables, and then the wine that they would make from the grapes on their land. And so my dad, it's really sweet. That's still how he relieves his stress, is to work in the garden. And so he came to me and said, I've got all these seeds. This was like 5 years ago, from your white sage plants. What do you think of me trying to propagate it, from seed? Do you think I could? And I was like, well, do your research. White sage is really finicky, and see, about, you have to water it a certain way. It has to be watered from above. It can't be watered from below. And there's a whole thing. And so anyway, my dad has hundreds of seedlings now, and he has them. It's a little OCD, but he's got a lot of seedlings, and then he's got them in every stage all the way to mature plants. So the Paracas family nursery is thriving over here. You should. So Paulette's talking about moving to Palm Springs. You'd have a really easy time, propagating white sage. There's lots of other kinds of salvia and artemisia that grow. I'm very familiar with the microclimates and all of the different native plants that grow in the Anza Borrego Desert and forward through Palm Desert. So if you get to that place and you want help, I'd be really happy to help you get seedlings and establish your garden, because there's a very specific microclimate, but it really does support artemisia and salvia. Plants. Oh, I love my dad. I'm a full-on daddy's girl, and he knows it too. I mean, because you know what? My dad, this is an interesting thing, right? My dad has never in my life disappointed me. You know, most people disappoint us, and because they're human. I've seen my dad's humanity, but he never disappointed me. And so I think that's really special. He always, I know for sure my dad and I are soulmates. We've either been brother, sister, dad, father, father, daughter, father, son, whatever, all the way through. In fact, I'm pretty sure he was my father and I was a son before. Because my dad didn't have any biological sons in this lifetime. So it's really interesting when you look at your web of souls, because I think we reincarnate over and over again with this web. And you think, like, for me to have that depth of affection from my dad, which is profound, it is one of the most intense loves of my life. Truly, I just feel so grateful that he chose me to be his daughter. I feel really blessed. And so anyway, if you have your parents, love on them. We've got Father's Day coming up. If you don't, just know they live on in you in profound ways, and they're so proud of you, watching over you from above. You know, and remember too, when your parents pass away, they move into healed space for the most part, and so they, up above, even if there was a very dysfunctional relationship, when you cross, and I've shared this before from having a near-death experience, when you cross, it's like the whole slate gets cleaned in a way. Nothing is forgotten. Of course, all that wisdom stays and all of those challenges stay, and there's still karmic energy happening, but there's an immediate integration. And I think they look on us from above with so much compassion because we're still here in the matrix and we're still here in the game. Do you know what I mean? And they get freed from all of that. So just know, I'm not trying to make you cry, but just know they're looking down on you and they're very proud of you. And the more you meditate and the more you do this work, especially ancestral lineage work, the more you're really going to feel that love. And sometimes from beyond, it's even more powerful than it is when they're here with you. And the other thing I'll tell you too is sometimes you get to choose your family. You know, I have people in my life who are not blood relations, but I truly consider them family. I would do anything for them. They would do anything for me. And that's a choice. We've made that choice. We are that close in this lifetime. And so if you have friends who are like family, you have to count yourself blessed too. You know what I mean? You really do. Because sometimes you choose great ones and sometimes you don't. You know what I mean? You're here to learn these cosmic lessons. And those lessons, by the way, can be about abandonment. Those lessons can be about betrayal. It's really, really hard. It's really hard to even say this to you, honestly, because I've been working with this energy for many years, especially for clients. Is that sometimes in past lifetimes you have accrued karma, you know? I mean, it goes all the way back to ancient Atlantis, when sometimes our spiritual gifts were not used for the highest purpose. And so some people do come in and they have to have the experience of being, because they have victimized others, the karma of that is being victimized, is being made to feel powerless. And sometimes people are working through that karma and it's really hard to watch. Because you would say, well, why would God do something like that? Keep in mind, there's always a balance in the universe. There's always a balance. And so we often do reincarnate to come back and to right wrongs. And that doesn't always feel really good. We rarely have to reincarnate and do that the whole time. But some souls come in and they want to get it over with really quick and leave. Do you know what I mean? And so sometimes they find ways to wrap that experience up very quickly. And it's an interesting question. Like Michelle says, I wondered if I was a bad person in past lives. Maybe reframe it just a little bit to say, did you ever act out of alignment with your soul's broader purpose? And the answer is yes, because here's the reality. You're human. Every time you incarnate, you're human, and you're in the matrix. And no matter how good of a person you are, circumstances sometimes out of your control can really influence you. And so it's about forgiving yourself and recognizing, right, that if you have to go through certain trials in this life, they're usually time limited. And as long as you're learning the lessons, you're going to move through them quickly. It's people who refuse to learn, where it feels like it goes on for flippin' ever. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like people who keep making the same mistakes over and over and over again. And you think, don't you want to stop that? Like, do you really want to keep doing that? And maybe it's a yes, but most of the time people actually do want to work through. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, it's very possible. Kenneth says, if we screw up in the beginning, can we fix it toward the end? Or do we come back again because we didn't pass the first time? It's a really interesting question. And the reality is, I'm not sure, Kenneth. I mean, I only know what I know, right? But what I've seen based on decades of experience with now thousands of people, right? I mean, I work with, my Sage Goddess work reaches about 2 to 4 million people a week. And we have about 1 million people in our active communities. So I do have a really powerful case study just in terms of like the numbers of people that I see going through these experiences. But I think it's a great question. I think it's really hard to know. And I do think that here's what I know for sure. This is probably the only thing I know for sure. You ready? The only thing I know for sure kind of on this subject is I do think the universe sees when you're trying and when you're not. And it doesn't matter how much of a show you put on, and it doesn't matter how nice you pretend to be. You know, when those doors are closed, when you're being yourself, when you're who you really are, I think that's the real test to the universe. Have you integrated this wisdom? It's the stuff that you think no one sees that really matters. And what I have realized is, Lorian says, say that again. It's very interesting. I think that if you try, if you're trying to learn, if you're trying not to repeat the mistakes, if you're trying to be a better person, if you're trying to give people more latitude, but here's the real problem with that, right? A lot of people really, 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 even though they might believe that on some level, they almost don't give people the benefit of the doubt. Like they'll say, oh, if that person wasn't nice once, then they're never going to be nice. And so I'm never going to be nice to them. When you do that, you don't give the other person a chance to grow and evolve. And I know that's really hard because you might say, well, gosh, they were so terrible. They were so mean. They were so violent, whatever it is. I'm a huge proponent of second chances. I really, really am. I don't think you have to keep bending over backward if someone shows you that they're never going to rise to the occasion. But I do think you need to let people have a chance to show you that they're growing and they're trying. And that can mean a year later, that can mean 5 years later, that can mean 20 years later with family, right? But I think giving people the benefit of the doubt is really, really helpful. Because I think, for the most part, people do want to do better. It's just really hard sometimes, because sometimes doing better means putting someone else's needs or welfare ahead of your own, which might sound really simple, but for some people that's really difficult. Yeah, so give people a second chance, a third chance. You know what I mean? I mean, even with Sage Goddess, right? We've had customers who have been, said mean things and done weird things and weird energy and like in and out and, whatever. And they come back and they're like, I've been doing this work and I'm really trying. You know what I mean? I was going through a tough patch and I'm really sorry about that, but I want to come back and I want to try to do better. And we acknowledge that, like, okay, well, everybody can change. And I think an open, forgiving heart makes you beautiful. I really do. I think an open, forgiving heart makes you beautiful. And people will say, well, it can also make you stupid, right? Okay. But I'd rather try, right? I mean, if I really believe in what I do, then I have to give people another shot. I can't just say, well, you're out of my life and bye-bye. Sometimes I do. I have actually made the cut sometimes. And so I will say you have a right to boundaries. And you can decide what those boundaries are. But I would just encourage you with to the extent that you feel like it's safe and you can do it, give people the chance to show you a new version of themselves, because people evolve and grow, and it's really beautiful too. And it gives you a chance to see, like, and have some faith, right? Yeah, I have a friend who had, terrible trauma, childhood trauma, right? I mean, just nothing I would even ever describe to you here, right? Really, really bad. And I knew that person in my life had come to this really intense place of healing, when he was able to describe the fact that he would actually consider seeing that person again. And here's what I would say to that person. And it's like, look at you. And that has nothing to do with that other person. That has everything to do with him. And so the fact that he could say that, I was like, I like it. You know what I mean? And you don't even have to go and say it to the other person. If you hold it in your heart, that's really what matters. Because to the universe, what the universe is looking for is, where are you? The universe doesn't really care about where you are relative to other people, but the universe does kind of keep track of you. That's a great question, Michelle and the Cello. And by the way, if you're new to Wisdom Circle, this is kind of how it rolls. I'm a talker, and so are you. So we kind of just, you know, flutter around and see what's interesting to push into. But I know. Well, Dawn, and like kind of sit with that, right? Like she's saying, oh, my stomach knots at the thought, like I'm going to vomit, like push through that. By the way, anytime energy comes up and makes you feel kind of nauseous, the only antidote is breathing. I'm always teaching you guys this, but like the big belly breaths, like, and really releasing all the air from the diaphragm will move you through nausea, especially when it's an energetic nausea. So marriage. You want to talk about marriage? We can talk about marriage. I got a lot to say about that. So I'm gonna kind of, I'll tell you. So strengthening your daily practice. How do you work through stress? Tips for meditation. How do you find your life path and purpose? Which gets us into a whole other subject too. Like we could talk about life path numbers but marriage seems like a marriage conversation. Back in the day, by the way, I don't know if any of you were around then, but a good friend of mine, Pixie Campbell, Pixie Lighthorse, and I had a little TV show called Sacred Grit. And we talked all about marriage. This was like 5-6 years ago. We were doing Sacred Grit. And if you hunt for it on YouTube, you might be able to find it. And that was a super gritty conversation about the realities of marriage. So let's talk about it. Well, we can talk about life path too, because here's the thing. You're married to somebody with a life path. Marriage is one of the trippiest things to me. It really is. Because I think in so many ways, it goes against sort of our natural human instincts and to some extent, our natural human desires, right? And it suggests that we can be with one person forever and that we will find a way to grow together and not apart. Do I believe it's possible to grow together? I do. But I think it's really challenging. And I don't think a lot of us really acknowledge how hard it is. Like, it's really hard. You do have to work at it a little bit, you know what I mean, in order not to fall into traps. And depending on, Michelle's like, too bad we don't have hours. A great marriage is beautiful. I think all marriages have problems. I think if people tell you they've never had a problem in their marriage, I'm not sure they're fully being honest with you. Everybody's had their problems. I have had my own problems. I've been with, my husband for almost 20 years. So come on. I mean, I'm sorry. In the course of half your life in 2 decades, you're going to find yourself in some precarious spots. So, and it's interesting too, to think about marriage among, advanced souls, because we've had a lot of contracts and a lot of agreements, right? And so it's like, how do you find each other over and over and over again? And then how do you acknowledge the complexities of life, right? And so I think part of it is compatibility is obviously really important. And I do think there's something really interesting about not marrying someone who's of your same element, right? Like I'm all fire and my husband's all earth and a little bit of water. I've got no earth, no water. So he and I are like, we literally find each other at this halfway point, but that's a struggle sometimes because, that's a struggle. Earth signs want to talk, and then water signs want to cry. And I'm over here, fire and air, just going, I want to yell, and then I want to run away. And then I'll come back. It's like, that makes communication really hard. If one person wants to sit there and talk and, shed a couple tears or whatever, the other person's like, get out of here. I'll be back. Give me 6 hours and I'll figure it out. So this is an interesting conversation too about marriage and partnership. I do think that everybody has a contract with the person or people that they end up in sacred, intimate relationship with. And I think the better part of your work is to really figure out what the terms of that contract are. And I think you can figure out by talking with each other, but I think ultimately you have to engage your spirit guides to really understand. So why am I with this person? I would tell you, I think I probably figured out on a hardcore level about 5 years ago why I'm with my husband at the core of it. And what a fascinating process that was, because it's not superficial. Like I'm doing spiritual work with him. And So that's tricky. That's a whole layer on top of, oh, I think you're cute, and oh, or you're interested in the same things. Like, I'm actually here to do stuff with him and for him in service, almost to a certain extent. So how do you engage your spirit guides? So what do you do about that? So here's a really interesting little trick I can teach you. You ready? You want to do it real quick? I want you to think about a place in your life where you need to, and my students will be familiar with this one, but I want you to think about a place in your life where you really need to have a deep conversation with another mortal, with another human being. That person does not need to be alive for this exercise, which makes it really interesting because you can go back and do this meditation with other people. Yeah, well, it's true, Carmelin, right? Like, if you've got two fire signs, you're probably going to spontaneously combust. I mean, the sex is really good, but somebody's not going to make it out alive. So it's like, I think it just depends on what you're looking for. So here's the meditation. Ready? It's called the Blue Room. And the Blue Room meditation, I created it, but I've been using it for a long time. My clients love it. The Blue Room meditation is a meditation, and sometimes you do it in dream time. So sometimes I'll set the intention to activate Blue Room in dream time and then just let it happen. Blue Room is a space where you invite your higher self, and the higher self of anyone that you're in relationship with and struggling with. You invite them into the space. Your higher self, the higher self of the other person. And you can also invite in spirit guides. You can invite in angels or archangels. No entity has to come. So if anybody comes into the room, this is a voluntary exercise. I've never had the higher selves decline, by the way, because it's always an invitation. I invite my higher self and the higher self of this person to enter the Blue Room. You can enter it now. You can enter it in dream time tonight. And here's the most important part. Are you ready? You tell them what you want them to explore or discuss, but you release your need to understand the outcome. That's a really important part, because you can't control, nor should you want to, energetic work. You might feel called to like get everybody on the same page, but you can't be attached to the outcome. You can't say, all right, I want Joe and my higher selves to go into the Blue Room, and I want my higher self to tell Joe's higher self to get lost. You know what I mean? You don't get to do that. You can simply invite your higher self and Joe's higher self into the room, say, this is the topic where we're having some conflict. I release my need to know the outcome, and I ask that the conversation unfold for the highest good of all beings involved. Amen, aho, and so it is. And let it be. And it's really funny because nobody has to be aware, okay? But spirits can always decline. I have not had, and your spirit guides will tell you that this isn't happening, or you'll get a sense or a feeling like it's not the right time. Sometimes your timing is off. But as long as you released the need to know or control the outcome of those conversations, it's a very fluid, energetic conversation. And one of the things I have seen is, and I promise you, like, this may be the nugget from tonight that really helps you. How many times have you laid there in the middle of the night and thought, I've got to talk to this person. I've got to have the conversation. We need to talk this out. They're not going to like it. They're going to resist it, but I need to have this conversation. The reality is you don't need to have the conversation most of the time. Energy is a powerful thing. We as third dimensional humans think unless we sit down and physically talk to someone that we can't work things out. I spent my whole life having purely energetic relationships that are not bound to a physical human container. So for me, this is like second nature. And I even have friendships now where I haven't seen some of the people in years, some of the people in decades, but our energetic interactions are happening all the time. And because I believe that's so real. And so, okay, so are you ready? So Nadia says, I try to, but he shuts down and becomes disassociative. Where this is really helpful, is in cases where they are going to reject your request to talk. This isn't a formal request to talk. This is just an invitation to higher selves to explore a space together and to seek a mutually, collectively advantageous outcome. Okay? And so I have had situations where there's been really intense conflict and I've thought nothing is going to fix this. You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing I can do. There's nothing the other person can do. call in the blue room, invite the higher selves, ask them to engage the subject, release your need to understand or control or affect the outcome. And I have seen things just work themselves through. It'll be something where it's like a knot, of energy where you think, God, nobody's ever going to get to the bottom of that. And all of a sudden this person forgives the other person, and that person decides to give up the thing they were trying to control. And so nobody is physically present. This is an entirely energetic process. It's interesting, isn't it? But again, if you're one of those people, you're like, I have to know what was said. I have to know what the outcome was. I want the outcome to be this. If it's not this, it's wrong. That tells me, if you were to say yes to any of those things, that tells me you're not quite in the space you need to be in to do blue room. Blue room has to be, I'm upset about this. I don't think it's right. But I also recognize that it's not my will. It's the will of the universe that has to unfold. And so I'm simply asking for resolution. And the God box, which Kenneth is mentioning, and thank you for that, Kenneth, is this idea of surrendering what is worrying you right now. Your anxiety and your fear and your worry, and I only feel like I'm minorly exaggerating when I tell you this, your anxiety and your fear and your worry will kill you if you let it. It can make you physically sick. And I always say worry is a thief. You know what I mean? It doesn't give anything back. So when you worry about what could happen or what might happen, and you spend and you push all that energy toward those future scenarios, and then it doesn't happen, the universe isn't going to go back and go, you know what, those 3 days you spent worrying about that, I'm going to credit that back on the end of your life. Do you know what I mean? It'll steal from you. Worry is a thief. Worry is a thief. And worry, when people come to me and say that they're sick, I almost can see into their energy field and see where the origin of that disease is. And it's all rooted in anxiety and fear. What you fear comes to pass if you worry about it long enough. And so it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. So, and it's beautiful. Pam says, best thing I learned was to surrender to God. And you don't have to surrender to God. It's like however you see the prime creative force in our universe, and you can call that all kinds of things. I often refer to it as source, because that's sort of non-denominational and it's not off-putting to people, because I really do believe that all the paths are true. You know what I mean? So if God is Buddha to you, that's great. If God is Allah to you, that's great. If God is whatever to you, that's great. I think God shows up in a way that you can recognize, using your language, using your modalities. God is trying to find you, and you'll ultimately connect with God in whatever way it is that resonates with you most. And I think whatever that looks like is accurate for you. So I say God, but it's never with the idea that you also have to go and believe in God. I think you have to ultimately find out how God is trying to appear to you, and honor and acknowledge that in some way. So yes. And I actually think, thanks Deborah for that. She said, I've learned that this lifetime is she's here to find self-love. And what's really interesting to me too, is I think if my partner was sitting here and could say what he appreciates about me, he's not, and he's a Virgo. He hates it when I put words in his mouth. Right. But I think he would tell you that I'm passionate, and that this is the path I live. This isn't just something that I talk about because it's interesting to people online. This is actually my soul path. And I think he finds that my integrity around what I believe and what I understand to be true, and my quest for knowledge and truth, I think he finds that interesting. And because I'm constantly trying to improve myself, I'm trying to improve my awareness, I'm trying to improve my integrity, I think he recognizes that means I'm also trying to show up more fully in relationship too, and be available. So I think it's partly about, if you can get to a point where you really love yourself, then you can be a better partner in marriage. To our point earlier, you can feel more physically well. I think people who love themselves have a much easier time going through life, both individually and as partners too. Oh, thank you for that. And I appreciate that quote too. I think it's really powerful. You know what I mean? And truth is silent because it doesn't have to defend itself. There's a really great book by Roman philosopher Epictetus. And you can find it on Amazon, Epictetus, Epictetus. And it's a guide for living a good life. And it's just ancient wisdom. He was, a teacher to some of our most famous Greek philosophers. And so he talks about not trying to defend yourself, necessarily. It's like, don't try to, if you're living in truth and you're acknowledging who you are, don't constantly go around apologizing and trying to defend yourself. Live in truth and integrity, and then you don't need to do that. So I think that's really interesting too. It's super hard to love ourselves, but I mean, what's the alternative? You know what I mean? And like, how good of a parent or a partner or a friend are you if you can't find that basic love for yourself? And I think a big part of our love for ourselves too, and I love you guys too, like I really see you. So, Luna Love says it's hard to love yourself. Well, but I love you. Like I see you. I think I know you, and I, can see the beauty in you. And so sometimes you need a good mirror. I like to think I'm a good mirror for people. Like if you look at me, you probably see me looking back at you with love. And that's just a reflection of you. It has nothing to do with me. And I think we're all here to mirror to each other beauty and truth and wisdom. And some people are here to mirror to us where we need to grow too, and where we need to get better. And so that's why, like, for me, criticism is an interesting thing. I welcome it as long as it's constructive, because I am trying to improve. I honestly have spent this last year really trying to fine tune almost everything about my own life and my own process, because I'm realizing, at 45 years old that if what I want to accomplish in this lifetime, I got to hustle, and I want to make sure that everything that I'm doing and creating and saying is coming from a place of alignment. But that's hard work to do, and it requires having some pretty accurate mirrors to look in, people who are going to reflect to you the truth and beauty of who you really are too. It's interesting, right? I love it. Rikavari. A little dyslexic there on your name. Rikavari. Beautiful name, actually. I love me, she says, finally. I love that too. I love that you love you. Okay, so Brandy says, what do you suggest for unblocking mental access to the higher self? And then Amelia is asking about dark night of the soul. Oof. Aw, I'm so glad. Well, the thing is, the part of the reason I'm able to speak to you about this stuff is that it's not foreign to me. Like I'm working through all of these things too, and it's iterative, right? The soul's development is not linear. It doesn't go from A to B to C to D and then you graduate. It's not like going through school. It's like A to B to C and then back to A, and then A to B to C to D and then back to A, where you almost go, am I not learning? Do you know what I mean? Like, am I dense? Like, am I not seeing it? When your soul's like making progress and then 3 steps back and 5 steps forward and 2 steps back. It's like, so I think one of the things in terms of having a mental block around accessing your guides, the best tip I can give you is give them permission to work with you in dream time and make sure you're getting rest. If you don't sleep, 2 things happen. One, your body, it becomes very difficult for your body to regulate stress, which can result in weight gain. It can result in all kinds of health challenges and problems. People who don't sleep tend to be very anxious, very nervous, very stressed out, and very overweight. And so what I always say is you have to figure out, if you're not sleeping, what the block is, because you need at least 6 to 8 hours of uninterrupted rest a night in order to be sane. Like seriously, I think in order to manage your stress and in order to release toxins from your body and be able to digest your food, you need that rest. The other thing that happens when you're not sleeping well enough is you're psychically vulnerable. It's really interesting. I just recorded my last session, part 4 of light codes last night on dark code, and we did a quadrant scan of the energy field. Anyway, what I was saying is, how does weird crap even get into your energy field? Like people will ask me, there's something stuck, to me, and how did that even happen? Like I meditate, I smudge, I do all the things. Something in your aura is perforated. If you've got funky energy, dark code, if you are feeling like there's something in your energy field that isn't right, there's a disturbance there, and it's been allowed in through lack of rest, lack of energetic work. You need to make sure that you are smudging and taking good care of your auric field. And the other thing is too, you can actually ask your spirit guides to surround you all the time. Just call them in. I'm calling in my guides. I'm calling in my angels and archangels. I'm calling in my sleep guides. You can do that right before you fall asleep, calling in sleep guides, asking for minimum 6 hours tonight. And then what I like to say is, and I'm requesting that my spirit guides use the space of dream time tonight to work with me. Because that's one of the only places that they can push past your conscious barriers to get to the deeper part of your psyche. And so give your spirit guides permission to communicate with you in dream time. It's a very interesting process. Ooh, we got birthdays. We've got birthdays. Brittany, happy birthday. Aw, she's doing it today because her husband's working tomorrow. Happy, happy, happy. And then I saw a second birthday too. Sarah. Okay, congratulations and happy birthday to you guys. So that's an interesting thought too. And here's what you need to know. They're probably not going to give you a bunch of dreams you're going to remember. Don't be so human. When people say, I don't hear my guides, I don't see my guides, I always ask, don't tell me your guides don't leave you love notes on your altar. And don't tell me your guides don't, show up and stand in the corner of your room either. Don't expect human communication with the spirit world. They're not going to do it. That's not how it works. And in fact, the best part, truly, the best part of spiritual development is recognizing that they often work in vast downloads of information that you won't even know happened. But all of a sudden you've got a little bit of inspiration for something. You're like, where did that come from? Or how did that thought pop into my head? Or, I'm feeling a little bit more peaceful today. I don't know why, but I just am. They do not communicate that way. So I want you to consider, so we are in 3D, right? We're bound by space and time. In the higher dimensions, and I just finished writing about this for one of my books that's coming up too, they say that the stargates and the angelic dimensions are 8th and 9th dimensional energies. It's very hard for any of us to imagine what communication looks like in those realms. There is no time. So it's not like I meditate at 6 p.m. and then I hear them from 6 to 7. There's no time. So you could get messages about a meditation 10 years from now, and that has no relevance to, do you know what I mean? That has no relevance to the spirit world. They're giving you the information. It wasn't when you thought it was going to happen, but it's coming. Okay. I once set an intention to learn about a certain past life. And I kept asking because I knew what this past life was. I knew that I had died in a certain way. And I knew that there was a certain person who was there. I didn't know who this person was, but I had this whole premonition. I kept asking to know more about this life because I just had a feeling it was going to be important for me. This was probably 10 years ago. And I would say it was 5 years ago that I walked into a supermarket and looked across and instantly knew the person whose eye contact I had just made was the person who was there when that life ended. And that person instantly knew that too. And I almost fell over flat. I mean, I literally was like, and do you know why they waited 5 years to show me? Because the awareness of that lifetime was so overwhelming to me. There's no way I could have handled it or processed it when I asked for it. And so we sit there and go, spirit guides, give me this. Spirit guides, teach me this. Spirit guides, I want to have all my psychic development. And I want to understand all of my soul gifts. And I want to, and they're sitting there going, are you kidding me right now? They know if they were to show you, right? If they were to show you everything that you say you're ready to know, it might actually be really hard for you to keep going. It might actually be really hard for you to keep going. I'm not trying to bum you out, but I'm just saying, think about it. Like when your kids come to you and they're like, I want to know everything about everything. And you're thinking, slow down, kid. You know what I mean? I'll tell you this much about that much, but I'm not going to tell you this much about that much because you're not ready. And as a good parent, if you overwhelm your kid, that's on you. That's not on them. You have to stage gate their learning so that they get enough and they're prepared. But if you were to tell them, hey, guess what? Here's what relationships are like. Most people get a divorce. You're probably going to change your career 9 times. If you were to tell them like the real deal, they probably would just get back in bed and pull the covers up over their eyes. We get through life because it's incremental. I'm going to say that again. We get through life because it's incremental. Now, if you're ready for more of a bone, right? Ask them. Say, show me a little bit more. Or show me what I need to know about this person that I'm ready to know about this person. Just give me like that. You know what I mean? You can, because again, if your child were to come to you and say, I get it, you're trying to keep me safe, I appreciate it. Because one of my favorite mantras is, don't open doors you can't close. I sound like an old lady when I say that, don't I? But that's just, mistakes of my youth, right? I opened doors that I didn't know how to close. And some doors are really hard to close. So when Celeste is on the other side of it, right? So Celeste says, what if you're too scared to ask at all? You're on the other side of the spectrum where you're like, well, shit. What do I ask, right? So are you ready? You can do it with me. Let's do it together. You roll your shoulders back. My knee hurts from all the moving around, all the moving around today. Roll your shoulders back. And like watch your posture, because you want your energy to flow freely through your Sushumna, or your central column. Deep breath. Spirit guides, and you can just say it with me if you're ready. Spirit guides. I'm ready to receive. I'm ready to receive what you are ready to show me now. And I ask that you give me all guidance that I am prepared to receive, work with, and integrate at this time. I ask that you present that information and guidance to me in a form I can understand and that I will recognize. I give you permission to work through my dreams and dream time. I ask that you only reveal wisdom and information that's in service of my highest good and my soul's truest path. And I give you permission to show me, to lead me, to guide me, all in service of my own personal evolution toward the path and the purpose that all of you have placed before me. Help me to walk this path with grace and courage. Surround me with guides and guardians who can also be supportive on my path. I ask this for myself, and I ask it for everyone in the circle tonight. May you know, may you understand everything that is ready for you at this time. May it come to you with clear signs and symbols. And may all of those signs and symbols bless you on every level. Amen, aho, and so it is. Whew. That's true. So Kristen says, in clinical psychology, the brain is designed to process things in a slower manner. Imagine if the subconscious didn't exist, right? So Billy says, where's the proof the spirit guides exist? I love the question, but I will tell you that's a very 3D question, in the sense that 3D is going to give you proof, right? So because the spirit guides exist outside of space and time, their dimension is different. And so they're not going to show up. It's sort of like asking them to speak to you with a human voice. That's not how it works. And so I think one of the main things for you to think about is you got to meet spirit on spirit's terms. They're not required to meet you on your terms. And again, when I say these things to you, it's really funny, because having that near-death experience that I had, and it was only I think it's probably about 4 years ago now. I was shocked, even with all the work that I do, even having had multidimensional, sacramental-based journeys and all of the experiences that I have been blessed enough to have in my life, working with ayahuasca and some of the deeper spirit medicines. I was shocked. I mean, there's nothing to prepare you for that moment when you cross, because everything you feel here, judgmental, angry, jealous, anxious, all of those emotions, you can't even find them there. It's not accessible, because you're not in a human dimension. You're outside of time, space, and you're in the presence of oneness, where all souls are equal. And so you can't even get there. And so I'm telling you that tonight because maybe you need to hear it. Do you know what I mean? And by the time you get there, it'll be too late. You won't be able to come back and go, you were right. Although maybe I'll already be there by the time you get there, and so I'll say, high five, I told you it was good over here. You just needed to come over when you were ready. It's so good that you wouldn't want to come back, which is why you always hear. So in my near-death experience, I was crossing, and I remember saying it out loud, if my children will be okay, please don't bring me back. And the minute I said, if my children will be okay, please don't bring me back, I heard, we're losing her, clear, all the monitors going, all of that, like all of a sudden there was a big bright light and all of that was happening. As soon as I said, if my children will be okay, please don't bring me back. I really love living a human life. So for me to say, if my kids will be okay, please don't bring me back, that tells you that is some incredible place. You are sacrificing now. You are suffering now. You will not be suffering then. You're suffering now. And it's because you're here to work out something with the spirit of your mother or the spirit of your children. You're here to help your partner. You know, you don't even know why, but you're here to help your partner, or your partner's here to help you. Whew. But when you go one day, you're going to an incredible place that you will never want to return from. And what I will tell you is this, whatever work you're here to do must be really important, because you would not have chosen to come here unless it was that important. Why else would you sacrifice pure peace, pure beauty, pure oneness, pure unity, pure love, right? Why, how would you? And one of the most profound meditations I have ever done was a meditation where I saw my soul tribe, all the people who agreed to come back and incarnate again this time together. And it was almost like a meeting. And I'll come back to your question, Nezzy. It was almost like a meeting. And it was one of the most intense meditations I've ever had. And it was almost like a meeting. And I could see my dad, and I could see my grandmother, I could see my mom, I could see my sister. And all of us were saying, I'll see you back here soon. You know, let's go do this. Let's go do this and get back. And it was like, I'll see you. And then the sadness of knowing, right? The sadness of knowing that when you get here, you're not going to recognize each other right away. So like you drop into this 3D amnesia, like, why am I here? Am I on my soul's path? Am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? And it's like, if your soul could talk to you, your soul would say, why are you asking those questions? Of course you're on your soul path. You're making a huge sacrifice. You're giving up 100 years of spirit time to come here and do this thing. And thank you for being here. We're so glad you're here. It's going to suck a little bit, but we promise it's worth it. And then as soon as we can, we'll get you back. You know what I mean? But that part of the conversation, nobody talks about that. That's partly why I'm sharing it tonight too. You know, it's like, we all took a deep breath together. And I think some of us did too. I really do. We all took a deep breath together and said, I'll go with you, but let's get back as soon as we can. Can we? Like, let's not dilly-dally, especially the older souls. You know, we were like, don't mess around. You know what I mean? Like, let's go, let's do, let's shift, let's be present, let's unfold, let's evolve, and then let's go. Let's come back and get back to where we need to be. Okay. So for those, by the way, people who are adopted, here's what's really magical about this. And it's funny because my whole perspective on adoption, once I really became someone doing this work, this spiritual development work, really shifted. Adoption is even more special. And I don't want to cry because this makes me cry. What I believe happens with adoption is that a soul comes back to do work, but what would be considered their blood relations either are already here incarnated to do something else, or the soul agrees to come in without that safety net, that pure blanket of having blood relations. Keep in mind, your adopted parents this lifetime could very well have been your bio parents last time and could be your bio children next time. Okay. But I actually think that the adoptive parents made an even more challenging contract with you. That to me is the highest form of volunteering, because they're here to a certain extent without the obligation. They came through to support you because they recognized that somewhere else in your matrix, in your web, you needed that additional support. And again, it could be because your blood relations, were here already doing other work. And you encounter them. Maybe you encounter them already, not as your parents, right? And so anyway, I hope that is a message, because I really do believe it with all my heart, that I believe adoption is one of the highest callings to the human spirit. And it's an absolute sign. If you think that your adoptive parents are any less your parents, I would just encourage you to rethink that, because these are still people who said, I'll go. I love her. I'll go help her. I love him. I'll go help him. And so I think it's really, really beautiful. I really, really do. Now, someone had asked about hell and these concepts of hell. It's a very, very, very interesting conversation to me, because I do think, I do believe in the Hermetic principles. I do believe that the Hermeticism, or the Hermetic wisdom, which of course comes to us from Hermes, but we can trace it much further back to ancient Egypt, and then all the way back to Atlantis through Thoth, who was the earliest incarnation of Hermes and Mercury. Don't want to get too complicated, but Hermetic wisdom, if you haven't researched the Hermetic principles, I teach them to my students. I think it's the foundation of all wisdom in the universe. It's very simple, but it's deceptively simple. And the principle of polarity, everything has an opposite, is one of the primary pieces of Hermetic wisdom that we have, received over these thousands of years. And so I think, I believe that there is a counterpoint to good, to light, which is darkness, and shadow and evil. I do believe that there is an exact counter force to the highest form of light vibration in the universe. Having said that, everything that I teach you and everything that I talk about, I have to sort of tell you, I filter it through what I know, what I've learned, and what I've experienced. And I actually believe that it is very possible that there is a civilization living within the center of our planet. Many people believe that, okay? And they're not in purgatory, they're not in hell. They are a thriving civilization. And that center part of our planet, where we believe a lot of souls went when the great floods came, is an active, thriving community. And many people believe their spirit guides are there. I do think that there is retribution for wrongs done. And I don't exactly know what that looks like, but I do believe with all my heart and soul that a lot of people are working through their retribution here on Earth right now. And they're living a life that feels like hell, but they're living it right now here on Earth. And I feel for those people. You can see people working through incredible karma, and it doesn't seem fair. And yet when we look at someone in their life, we're seeing like the tiniest snapshot. We're not seeing, it's like the tip of the iceberg. We don't see the whole iceberg. So you don't really know what happened. You don't really know what kind of energies they're filtering or what has been in their line. And so anyway, I would, inner earth is a very, and the concept of telos and what happened with you have to think, if the flood stories are true, which you got to keep in mind, the flood is mentioned in the Bible, it's mentioned in the Quran, right? It's mentioned, Plato himself talked about the Great Flood and talked about Atlantis. And these are well-documented stories of a massive flood that destroyed anywhere from 50 to 80 or 90% of human population on the planet at the time. And so, you really have to think about, where did all those people go? And if they just disappeared, well, that's convenient, but maybe not. If these were very advanced civilizations, what we believe is they had advanced warning, and that they knew exactly when the planet was going to be destroyed, and they went inside because the whole surface of the earth was covered in water, and then they came back. So some of them came back and some of them remain in Telos. And so we have a very complex planet, very, very. But then, we talk about Nibiru, right? Planet X, which that's a whole other subject. But of course, NASA is talking about Planet 9, a mysterious larger planet in our solar system. And so people are making a lot of meaning about whether that's Planet X and Nibiru, and whether it's going to be orbiting too close to Earth, and could that cause another flood? And is our planet asking for purification? Which leads me to, I know we're almost at the end of our time tonight. This hour goes by so fast, but it leads me to the lava flow on our planet right now. here's my 2 cents, just for what it's worth. I think that our Earth has purified itself by water at least once. Everything purifies through the elements. Even when we take a shower, right? We purify, right? We purify with water. We bury things to purify them with earth. We burn things to purify them with fire. We allow, winds to come through and purify and move and clear and clean. I think our planet is purifying itself right now through fire. And I'm very curious about this as a healer, as a metaphysical practitioner. I'm curious about it as a soul. I have sat and watched this lava flow on the Big Island of Hawaii for an hour, just watching the live flow. And it's, all these questions about, is it ever going to stop? Is it just going to keep going? I think this is a whole scale purification. And I think as a collective, we're going to have to figure out how to work with these energies and how to acknowledge what's happening. Because it's almost like Mother Nature is looking at all of us like, are you asleep? Are you paying attention? Are you asleep? Are you paying attention? Are you asleep? Are you paying attention? And like Gaia herself is doing a scan to see who's making eye contact with her. So I try to make eye contact with Gaia. I try to lift my head and not listen to, the nightly news, and really focus on what's the planet saying. Because the rest of it is noise. But if you really are listening, if you put your ear to the earth and you're really listening right now, it's a purification by fire. And ultimately, yeah, so Teresa said Hawaii will grow larger as the lava flows. It will. That's how Hawaii grows. And so she's regenerating herself, right? But nature doesn't purify itself unless it's forced into a corner. It really doesn't. Nature's natural way of being is not this higher order purification. And so, as the Hawaiian island chain moves, I believe it's about an inch north every year, and eventually will not exist, right? And so this is a finite resource that we have, this beautiful island chain. And this is like long into the future. But if you sort of track the migration patterns, the weather patterns, and what will ultimately happen, it could be that Hawaii is trying to sustain herself by creating and expanding her islands, right? But and I don't have all the answers. I just want to encourage you, keep asking the questions. And if you go through your life, I think the best antidote to suffering is service. I really do. If you're bummed out in your life, if you constantly feel like unhappy and sad and depressed and discouraged, then you need to stop thinking about you and you need to go think about somebody else. The biggest antidote to sadness is service. If I'm sad, but I find out a way that I can help you, all of a sudden my mind is off of my problems and it's on to how can I be in flow? How can I be of service to you? So right now, if you're sad and discouraged and you're like, I don't know what to do and I don't know how to help and I don't, I feel depressed and I feel anxious and I feel sad and my life isn't this and I don't know, stop right now and ask how you can be of greater service in the world. And whether that's just, in my world, there's 1,000 different ways, right? Because I have our community, I have children, I have aging parents, I have, family, I have a partner, I have, an animal, of all the things. So there's kind of an endless number of ways that I can be of service. But the minute I start getting depressed and discouraged, it's like, no, my planet needs me. You guys need me. I need you. I need to ask how I can be of deeper service to you. I need to be able to figure out how I can provide to this planet because we're all here for a very short time for a very specific purpose. And so if you want to, well, and you have me too, you know what I mean? And I really love, thank you for that. I mean, I love this community and I'm as much here for you as you are here for me. And we're all here for each other. And I think that's why something like this, like Wisdom Circle, is so important because it reminds you, A, you're not alone. B, there's plenty you can do. Go outside, take your shoes off and sing to the earth. Plant a couple crystals, in the earth. Set an intention to be of deeper service in your life. Ask the people around you what they need from you and how you can show up in a more powerful way. And when you go to sleep at night, ask your spirit guides to show you in dream time, in symbols and in languages that you will understand, exactly why you're here and what you're supposed to be doing. And then how will you know when you're there? Honestly, you'll see it. I mean, I all I can tell you is I don't think I was really living into my soul purpose until I got brave enough to really do this Sage Goddess work in a bigger way, which was about 7 years ago. Sage Goddess was born. We're celebrating our 7th anniversary in July. And everything about my life kind of changed. It didn't necessarily get, perfect, but I felt better. You know what I mean? I felt like I looked a little bit different. Like you will find as you put the pieces of your puzzle together and get closer to your true authenticity, you won't have to ask, am I on the right path? You're going to look at yourself in the mirror and say, I think this is it. You know what I mean? Like, and you'll get to a place too where you're like, and I'm not going to apologize for it. And I'm not going to, make excuses for it. Like, this is just who I am. And this is what I'm supposed to do. And I'm going to try to do it as well as I can. And I'm going to screw up every day, but I'm going to get up and try again when I screw up. And so I think it's, it's like, be brave and really figure out like what that authentic piece is for you. And it's not going to look like mine, and mine isn't going to look like yours. So we also need to give people the freedom to do things that are outside the box. You know what I mean? So we can't say, oh, go live your soul purpose and then be super judgy about it. Like, well, why is that your soul purpose? I don't think that's a good soul purpose. Maybe you should try this other soul purpose. And it's like, no, if we're really going to give people the room to run, then we can't sit there and judge them afterward too, I think, is my perspective. That's right. Faith says, you feel it, man. You feel it deep down to the core of the planet and all the way up to source. When you're there, you know. And also when you're not there, you also know. And then when you change, everything else changes. So we're coming back full circle to the marriage question, and I'll kind of leave you with this. Yeah, and I love you guys so much. My shadow class is launching June 22nd. So if you're interested in exploring shadow work, alchemy, soul alchemy, transformation, like really getting in there and looking at your gunk, what's icky and sticky, as I like to say, in you, because all of us have icky, sticky parts, right? But until we look at them and agree to push through that and really look at it and excavate it and embody it and allow it to be, we're not going to get to a healed place. But I think in terms of understanding better marriage, what I will tell you is, if you do your soul work, you may feel like my wife is never going to come along, or my husband is never going to, catch up with me, or he's never going to understand my kooky relationship to rocks. He tolerates it, but I promise you this, and this I really do promise you, not just from my own experience, but from hundreds and thousands of people in the community. Everyone in your life has to align to your frequency, or they can't be in relationship with you. Have you had this experience where all of a sudden, like, people just kind of spin off and you're like, God, did anything happen? All of a sudden we don't talk anymore. They don't call anymore. I don't know. It's because they stopped aligning to your frequency. Everybody in your life right now aligns to your frequency. So if you want them to change, which that's not a good intention, but if you want to see if they're going to evolve, just keep changing. They're either going to align to your frequency or they're going to spin off, and either way is good. But you have to let go of the attachment to the outcome. You can't say, well, I'm not going to change because I don't want to lose her. It's like, you're probably going to lose her anyway. But if you don't change, then your health is going to struggle. Your health is going to suffer, because when you're not living in alignment with your path and your purpose, that's when you start to see health problems come along. Because that unaddressed potential is energy, and it starts to coagulate in your system. And then it starts to, if it's unattended by you, it almost starts to fester. And so then all of a sudden it's like shoulder pain and back pain. You know what I mean? It's like, it starts to take on a physical form if you don't address it. What if it's your child? So it's the same thing. Your child, everyone in your life, and stop thinking about your children as your children, because I promise you, your kids have been your parents, they've been your partners, they've been your kids are in your matrix, they're in your web, and this isn't their first go around with you probably. So stop thinking about them as these little tiny people that you need to help. You do have to take care of them, and they are tiny for a while. But I meet my kids eye to eye, and I know that in some cases their souls are very close in age to mine. And so I level with them and have conversations in language that's appropriate. But I really don't look at them and say, if we continue to align vibrationally and we set that intention, then we'll be in good relationship to each other. If they go out of alignment, they may spin off from me for a while, but they'll come back or not. Do you know what I mean? But instead of saying, oh, that can never happen with my child, or I can't become a spiritual person because what if my son doesn't like it? probably you're here to be a teacher, and that if you do your spiritual work, you will inspire your son will come around, and all of a sudden the whole family is working toward a higher purpose. So sometimes you have to be the brave one to do it first. That's beautiful. Charlotte says, my daughter adopted 3 Native American siblings. Now her whole family is living the Native American traditions. Like, again, sometimes one brave person has to go out and create the paradigm, and then everybody else starts to work within the paradigm. Are you that brave person who's having to shift that paradigm for your family? Right? I mean, it could be you, and that's not easy, but cheers to you. Hats off to you, because, you know, why wait? Why wait? We're here for such a short time. Party on. It's really true. Oh, you guys are so good. Well, I see you. I'm so grateful. It's not easy, but what are you going to do? I mean, I always say, what's the alternative? For a long time when I was younger, I went through phases where because I always knew I was supposed to be doing this work, but I resisted it because, you know, my mom was a Christian and scared the shit out of me. And so I was like, well, I shouldn't be interested in astrology, and I shouldn't read tarot cards and all, you know. I was meant to do all of that. And she was meant to caution me so that I would have respect for the energy of these things. But she was not meant to stop me. She was just meant to put safeguards and you know, safety rails around me. And she was a very good teacher like that. She taught me through fear, but, you know, I learned. So, anyway, I am so grateful for your presence, and I thank you, and I see you too. I'm really, really grateful for you. So what are you going to do before dream time tonight? If you didn't do the blue room now, you might consider doing the blue room. You can start easy and just invite your own higher self and your own spirit guides into the blue room and say, all right, guides, all right, higher self, I'm ready to take my practice to the next level, and I want you guys to show me how. And I want you to use language I can understand, symbols I will recognize, signs I will see, so I don't miss a thing. And I give you guys permission to go talk, and I will eagerly await the outcome. And then just surrender and watch how all the little pieces of your life, all the little puzzle pieces start to come together. Sherry Hauser says, will you put that in writing? Girl, as soon as I say it, I forget it. I'm menopausal. In my 30s, I could have done that. I could have said it all, and then it would all be still in my mind, and I could write it all down. Now I'm like, oh, shit. What did I say? Hope it was good. All right, you guys. So yes, I will talk to you more. So just so you know, Of Light and Shadow is the 6-month shadow course. I'm only going to teach it once. And it's starting June 22nd. And so we're going to be doing art for the shadow. We're going to be you're going to be creating an image of your shadow. I'm going to be teaching you shadow astrology, evolutionary astrology. It's going to be a really interesting ride. And I'm doing it because it's almost like a public service. I think there's enough of us now who really want to get into this alchemy, because we're not afraid to look at our stuff anymore. We've realized if you don't look at it, it's going to come up and bite you anyway. So I think I can't remember what the team has finally decided. I think that it's recorded. I believe that Of Light and Shadow is recorded, but there is going to be a Facebook group, and I will be going live in that Facebook group. And so that is where a lot of the discussion will happen. And I think that's kind of the best of both worlds. I'm experimenting with that platform. We haven't priced it yet. I've been a little busy. My son graduates from 5th grade tomorrow, so I'm trying to like dot all the I's and cross the T's. It's just one live class a month, and then there'll be one live Facebook kind of hangout, chit chat, kind of like this, just to see if you have questions and so you can share your stories. And then there's going to be a private Facebook group. And I'm doing the private Facebook group for this. I don't always do it for classes that I teach, but I'm doing it for this because stuff's going to come up, and you need a container where you feel comfortable sharing what's coming up for you. So, all right. Well, enjoy, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you so much for being here with me. It was a pleasure, really, to share this space with you. I could go all night. I just could. And I think you guys know that too, and you probably could too. So just know every 2 weeks, we're right here doing the same thing. I welcome your questions, even the difficult questions. You know, like there was somebody here tonight who was like, you know, show me proof. I'm happy to dance with your difficult questions. I may not have the answer that you expect or that you're looking for, but I'm an open book. So you can always come to me. I'm like that parent that you knew growing up where it was like, ask me anything. You just may not like the answer you get. You get sometimes. Oh, I'm glad you enjoyed it. All right, sweet ones. I'll see you soon. Take good care. Lots of love from my heart to yours. Thank you for being here tonight.